Right, good afternoon everyone. My name's Simon Smith from the CFCI. Welcome today to Friday's lunchtime presentation on the Marleigh Development out at Cambridge at Marshall's. Today we've got 4 speakers and we're going to hear essentially about 2 topics. We're going to hear about the master plan and the phase 1 works that have just started on site. And we're also going to hear today about the new primary school, which is expected to start next year on site in spring. We've got 4 speakers today, and in no particular order. We've got Sean Harris from Hill, who is a Senior Development Manager. We've got Alexis Butterfield from the architects Pollard Thomas Edwards, and he's an Associate Partner. We've got Kevin Myers, an architect from RH. He's a Director at RH, and we've got Andrew Krusik from Morgan Sindall, who's a Framework Manager. So Kevin and Andrew are going to speak about the school, and Alexis and Sean are going to speak about the master plan and the phase 1 work. So I'll hand over shortly, but if I could ask everybody who's attending, and we've got 80 people on the webinar today, and it's rising actually. If I can ask all the participants to save their questions and put them to the Q&A tab at the bottom of Zoom. And then what we'll do is after about 40 minutes of discussion, or presentation rather, we'll take your Q&A to the panelists, and I'll host that at the end of the talk. So one final tip to our panelists: if you're not speaking, if you put your microphone to mute, that might be a good idea. But let's kick off then. So Alexis Butterfield is going to start proceedings off, and then we're going to go on to Andrew, and then to Kevin, and then lastly to Sean. So Alexis, over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Yes, I'm going to take you through some slides, and then Sean's going to follow up with that. And we're looking at the kind of whole master plan, I suppose, and what we're delivering as part of phase 1. So if I just can see if technology is going to be our friend, maybe it isn't. Yes. So starting with the phase 1 master plan, really, this is just to sort of orientate ourselves. The phase 1 master plan, you can see here, taking up around half of the overall sort of total area of the site. And just as I say, to orientate ourselves, phase 1A, which is this area here, also takes in particularly the new local centre, which includes very specifically the school. And obviously we've got the school here today, and we're going to talk about how we've collaborated together on that. The local centre is directly adjacent to the park and ride, and that was quite an important decision early on in the process. Then phase 1B can be seen to the north, and it's all residential and is completely sort of surrounded really by new landscapes, including in particular what's called Gregory Park, which is this long linear green landscape, which is a suds landscape. The retained Kingsley Woods, which we're creating woodland paths through and things, and woodland play. The copse, which brings green space right down into the heart of that area of the development. And then to the right here is the plains, and the plains is a really sort of another sort of key green landscape that we're making. And this is a sports landscape with a sports building and also allotments and allotment building. Right, let's see if I can get this to work. So this kind of process never happens overnight, and indeed this one hasn't. So we actually started, Pollard Thomas Edwards started working with Marshall and the Marshall family back in early 2013, and we kicked off with quite a lot of community participation and kind of what's called inquiry by design. Essentially, you can sort of see the outputs of that on the left there, of these different sketch master plans, which were created very rapidly, so testing different ideas and different challenges that the local community felt there were in developing on this site. And what came out of this was a set of very important principles, which then really informed the whole of the development going forward from that. Also, what came out of that was an outline master plan, which you can see illustrated on the bottom there. Once outline planning had been achieved, we then took the opportunity to look again at the principles, really make sure that what had been done as an illustrative outline master plan really sort of captured everything that everyone wanted to do. And it was a very good process, actually, and something that we were able to involve the quality panel and the planners, and obviously our landowning and developer client, as well as the JV, to really sort of look at. There was and what it done, and then by doing the framework plan, it established those sort of key principles about the nature of streets and places and key frontages and things. At the same time as doing this, we were also engaged in looking at a design code. I'm going to take you through kind of how that design code was created, because it has an enormous kind of bearing really on how everything has developed since. So the design code started with some really extensive discussions with the planners, and particularly who were very keen on seeing a more kind of interesting and quite radical approach really to design coding, and also took in things like days out where we went to see good and maybe not so good practice in different places, and what had resulted from other design codes, and sort of learn lessons. And then finally, we were able to then do testing days where we actually tested the emerging design coding with different architects and with different developers to see if it would deliver results. The key outcomes of all that really was for veterans of using design codes will know that design codes can be huge and rather unwieldy documents and quite difficult. What we were asked to produce from the outset was a short document. The first part of the brief was it should be at less than 100 pages, which again, if you've used design codes before, you all know often they are a lot more than that. Also, it's one document. There's not other documents you have to read alongside it. It's some quite basic things. It's A4 format, which means that you can keep it on your desk, and it just makes the whole thing as user-friendly as possible. We also thought quite a lot about how the content was laid out as well, in terms of the actual sort of how the information is read. And that's really through a sort of process of just double-page spreads and trying to be really kind of clear about what we cared about. So in this case, this is some quite simple diagrams that just try to describe how junctions and intersections should work within the urban design, kind of allying highways design to building design and making sure that they all work together as a place. This was of critical importance really, because almost all of the roads and streets in the development are adopted as design for it. As is quite typical really for this kind of design code, we also included palette of materials. The palette of materials is actually quite careful, I think. What it tries to do is emphasize the use of brick as a sort of baseline palette, but then has accent materials. So you won't sort of add other things. The whole palette was developed around what we were quite inspired by, which is what we called artisan Cambridge. It's sort of artisan cottage Cambridge. It's not the architecture of the colleges. It's the industrial heritage, which we felt was particularly relevant given Marshall's sort of industry and background. Alongside that, with some really important things about do's and don'ts, really to sort of capture quality. Quality was the sort of key watchword right through this, and I think Sean's going to talk a lot about that, about how we did that. In this instance, we're looking at how materials and details should be used, and certain quite specific, what we kind of regarded as risk areas. So in this case, about how services are integrated into buildings so that they're not unsightly and not thought through. Another thing that quite often happens in these kinds of documents is you get a kind of profusion of character areas, and sometimes they don't quite have the sort of resonance that you'd hope. What we felt was that a good way of challenging this, but still having some kind of different character areas, was to align character to sort of fundamental principles like density. So in this case, the character areas move from south to north, moving from higher to lower density as you move sort of further away from the sort of from the main route and into the established areas of landscape around Kingsley Woods. And we named these very simply the edge, the town, and the city. Talking about character areas, given the fact we've got the school here and it's a really critical part of it, we thought we'd zoom in on the Market Square character area, which was, well, the Market Square area, which was part of the city. And this is the double page spread that was done to describe all of the different facets we wanted to have for that space, particularly about things about how uses and activity will be integrated, as well as the architecture itself and the sort of overall spatial design. The intention was that with all these different uses and places and spaces, actually you'd end up with one coherent place. So fast forwarding again, this is the planning drawings that were done for that area as it finally evolved. And what you can see is the market square that's evolved with different types of spaces for markets to be held themselves with stalls, but also with landscaping and tree planting to give shelter, and then rain gardens and fountain jets and public art, which is integrated particularly into the eastern parts of it, of the square, where there's an opportunity to create play. The buildings around that square have been quite carefully honed and include a huge range of different uses. On the north side, we've got the school, which we're going to talk about later on, but on the south side, we've got a nursery school. On the south side, we've got another nursery school, a cafe, we've got a community hall, a double height community hall, all located here on the south side of the square. And then on the upper floors, we've actually got a whole range of other uses, including meeting spaces for the parish council and business space. Then further to the corner and then moving down Morley Street, we've got retail as well, and sort of capture holds the corner there.
Alexis, 2 minutes.
Thank you. So the hangar itself, what we called that building was the hangar building, and the concept was a great roof which would really be the opportunity for all of the community to gather under and have all these different range of uses and have this sort of flexibility of use. And this is some typical sections through that building, showing how all of that's integrated into this one form, with the community hall taking up the full height of the roof, and then in other places actually 2 or even 3 stories integrated within that for all these different functions. And then this is Marleigh Square, just how that finally looked with the market use in foreground. This was all coordinated very closely with the other architects for the school, with RH Partnership. And here you can see how we worked on material and the material fabric for the buildings, and also the form and how they integrate together. Same with the landscape architects, thinking about how the landscape integrated with the uses and with the different and the different spaces we needed to make. And then finally, just thinking about actually how the spaces are going to be used, and particularly different times of day and different times of the week. So for instance, school drop-off or maybe evening events. And then finally, just some views of the some CGI views just of some of those buildings and spaces. So this is the hangar building, the evening shot. The Morley Street shops I was just describing earlier, again, rather like the hangar, these pick up on the industrial heritage of Marleigh and of Cambridge. Gregory Park, this is a really significant new green urban space, we think, for the area. And it's quite dramatic. It runs full length east-west of the site and incorporates a large area of suds. And it's sort of lined on both sides by homes. And then behind that, streets become much more intimate and really reflect, again, I suppose, that sort of cottage Cambridge approach that we wanted to take. In this case, it's looking at how different materials come together with these small-scale houses to make coherent streets. And then an awful lot of the streets are shared surface as well to sort of keep speeds down. And I think I'll stop there. So, Sean, do you want to?
Thanks, Alexis. I think we're handing over now to Andrew, actually,
All right.
Alexis. I think that's right.
Indeed, Alexis.
Sorry.
Thank you for that. Our journey with the primary school started when we bid and won the project through the Cambridgeshire County Council Design and Build framework. It was a two-stage tender approach, which has seen us working with RHP to balance the requirements of all stakeholders. And as Alexis has touched on there, they included Hill and Marshall, who had their design code and master plan already in place. We also have Anglian Learning, who are the trust who are sponsoring the new school. They asked for a particular focus on STEM and the Forest School, which we'll touch on in a lot more detail shortly. We also have the Cambridgeshire County Council design codes for education, and in conjunction with those, we also had to develop with one eye on the Department for Education output specification. And the context of the Forest School and the Tree Belt has seen a lot of work done between County Council, Anglian Learning and Hill and Marshall to maximise that as a learning environment. And Kevin will give you a bit more detail on that when he presents shortly. The other area we've been keen to maximise is the BREEAM requirement of it. We have a requirement within the design codes for a very good rating, which we're achieving, but we're also enhancing that to excellent in some of the energy credits, so as to maximise the benefits of those. Kevin will now take you through a summary of the design development process that's been occurring.
Thanks, Andrew. So I think Andrew's listed there a number of stakeholders, and a poor architect has to keep all of those people happy. Very difficult job. So starting with the context of the site, Alexis showed the diagram of the edge, town and city. Our site bridges all three, but is very much framed around the market on Marleigh Square, which is taken as being the city. And one of the key aspirations was that one of the buildings became a landmark corner, which I think originally envisaged in the design code would be the main hall, the bulk of the school being a two-storey building with a nursery closing the end of the court at the end there. Now that's a very strong, clear diagram, and actually the result of where we are that's gone in for planning is a building that's very similar in terms of forms about how this addresses the market square. But actually those that design schools know that it's not as simple as that, that the school came to us a very strong brief for a kind of STEM learning strategy and a forest school aspiration, and their visions were for a single-storey building in the middle of a forest. So we're trying to wrestle with this concept of building a school in a forest, but actually a very strict design master plan code to work with. So it was a really, really great, I'll say a really great challenge, and I think we've been quite successful in doing that. Again, you can see what we've done. We go through the adjacency studies, we come up with a modelling, how can we fit the buildings into the kind of two-storey version. And we came up with a concept which, rather than it being a STEM kind of bubble where we've got kind of centres of learning that have all teaching, indoor, outdoor classrooms all around a central hub, we came up with a kind of a morphing of that diagram where we were able to put halls and admin spaces and the nursery in kind of key locations as part of the master plan, but to deliver the main teaching spaces around a kind of more fluid form that went more into the landscape behind it. So we have relationships between ground floor classrooms and teaching spaces, and wrestling with all those things that we have on a site like this, which is about how you deal with safeguarding and public access. Most schools have a 2-metre high boundary fence to a car park, to an entrance, really secure. This is a hard edge building right up to the market square. And one of the key aspirations from all involved, including local authority, was to have a main entrance coming off the market square, hence the classic architect sketch you do there shows how we break forms, but there's a really strong diagram about how this building holds together. The resulting plan, and mentioned earlier, is we've inherited the forest schools. That was a great start. We actually have the forest. Not many schools are like that from day one. And we've worked to preserve that and deal with the kind of how the building interfaces with that through the landscape, which I'll explain later. So you can see the diagram we've produced overlaying that is that the orientation of the hall and the communal area is really important to produce a landmark building. The administration areas that help on the ground floor, give some animation for offices and general spaces, but they're actually minimize safeguarding issues. We have a nursery that is orientated so we can have a private teaching space and an outdoor learning space next to it that also integrates with the forest. And the shared facilities in yellow are really at the heart of the school. So this kind of STEM learning, the ICT, the science teaching, etc., can really be at the heart of the school, where outdoor spaces can interact and also the teaching wraps around it. In terms of access and strategy, much dialogue with everybody. We saw Alex's lovely kind of buzzing bee diagrams around the market square. The main entrance to the school has always been envisaged to be off the main market square, with a pedestrian entrance also for the nursery, and the little recesses we created so we can have some safeguarding gates with a kind of little courts behind that, so there's allow a kind of sense of privacy and threshold and animation. But also we've got the main vehicle entrances off Marleigh Street and a strong cycle entrance here, as well as a secondary cycle entrance here as well. There are other entrances off the back, but they're generally for maintenance only. All of the public areas will be accessed around Market Square, Marleigh Street, and leading through to car park and teaching beyond. Also, we had strict codes in terms of where building footprints needed to be. So we worked with PT literally right from day one, understanding where brick should be, where hard edges should be, so we can maintain the views and kind of forms of the whole streetscape. Particularly things that were really important were how you deal with small areas like this near Marleigh Street. So we don't want to just have a vehicle entrance. You want architecture and elements that help reinforce the street. So we provide things like brick walls and strong gables right onto the edge, so that it's really enforced how it's a kind of an part of the urban language. And you can see that the resulting building is very similar in forms to what the design code suggested at the beginning. Again, very much picking on the industrial heritage, working with the buildings opposite, as Alexis said earlier. So in terms of the plan, those that are used to working on school designs know that the starting point, particularly in DFE, is always an area table, and you can't design anything other than a box. What was really good about this project was the way that we had a number of design quality panel sessions, and they were able to help the client team with all of those stakeholders understand the importance of not just providing a big box in the middle of a field. And a lot of the issues that came out of design panel were generally around kind of lighting corridors, making places an absolute delight and not kind of being too mean. So we've got a diagram which is kind of very, very spread out on the ground floor, but there's lots of opportunities for kind of light spilling into the buildings for entrances here. We've got a double height space for the library that relates directly to an outdoor classroom, that relates to a STEM area. But the corridor that goes through is also lit from that side. So it's all about how you deal with those kind of individual little spaces, and it worked really well. And I think it's been quite successful strategy. The main entrance points, as I said, here, vehicles here, but they lead, the pedestrian and cycle areas do lead into kind of areas which are kind of outdoor classrooms, and the kind of the outdoor spaces are all about teaching as well as the interior. They very quickly go. We were able to get the two-story elements on the front by putting years 5 and 6 up on the second floor, and using kind of a bit of volume to get some double height space. So it's three very simple blocks that face the square: the hall, the two-story teaching space, and then the nursery, which has a taller volume. And the way it architecturally works together as an axonometric, you can see that there's a lot of accommodation on the ground floor, which is what the trust wanted. The nursery has its own entrance, similar to the main entrance of the school, and that has private outdoor learning spaces. And you can see how the second story sits over the building to get the double height space, which is the ICT area, which it will have painted walls, I hope, by the time we finished. And the double height, effectively the hall space, again, DFE, I don't see many halls of this volume being created, so design quality panel and the Marshall's team really helped us to generate this really grand main hall. Things that came out of quality panel, which are really important, things like outdoor access. So these doors here on the left are very large barn doors that can open like the community building with and spill out into the market square. So when we're having kind of community events as part of the school, they can all be interactive and spill out. But also they need to be safeguarding. We don't want people peering in, so we had to carefully control how windows are positioned and where blinds will be located. It's a very prominent corner, a lovely space. And again, the nursery is a double height space, privately looking into its own outdoor area. Materials we touched on earlier, the coordination is generally around what we're calling a kind of frieze that wraps around the whole area. So rather like this building, there's a concept of the whole market squares wrapped around a kind of brick pier and concrete frieze, with then the forms and materials kind of being a little bit playful above that, picking up on industrial heritage and kind of standing seam metal. I think one of the comments was, please don't make this all a brick building. We've seen enough brick in Cambridge. Do something different. So that was really encouraging to get that kind of feedback from the teams. It's been great. Elevations I won't dwell on. We can just get a sense of the scale of some of these buildings with the brick corner, pitch roof, the overall context of our site, how it fits into the market square, with the roof pitch forms, and just a very, very short run through about the landscape strategy. As I said, we did inherit forest, which is brilliant, and most of the kind of concept about how we develop outdoor spaces has been interrogated just as much as the interior. We've been working with WSP Landscape on this, and they've inherited kind of the trees. We're extending the trees. We've been looking at how outdoor play areas really integrate with that landscape. As I say, this was a forest and STEM school, so they're really keen to kind of really accentuate this, and just gives you a flavour of the richness of the outdoor space. The types of different rooms we've got, growing areas, we've been teaching science and using kind of water butts, talk about water harvesting, etc., as well as kind of storytelling, play areas, and then more practical side of things, bike stores. But actually, this becomes a science yard. So there's planets stored on the floor, and there's always a lesson of teaching around, and just the important things like putting grass roofs on the cycle shelters. It's really good for learning and be able to harvest the water. It's all about kids understanding how their buildings sit in the context of the environment and landscape whilst they're learning as well. And I'll just finish on a couple of aerial views. This is the view from the rear. So we've been focusing on Market Square, but there's a very rich landscape beyond that for the school. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. We're going to hand over to Sean in a minute, but just to say to people attending today, there's nearly 100 of you. If you could raise any questions for our panelists for the discussion at the end, then please do in the Q&A. Right, that's given Sean a bit of time to share his screen. So, Sean, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you. Oh, can everyone see that? There we are. Yes, yeah, thank you, Kevin. Really excited about that school. It looks fantastic, doesn't it? And I know that all the Marshall and Hill representatives are also really excited for it. So thank you for that. Alexis has talked previously about the design code and the work that PTE did with Marshall at the outset. And you can see the timeline here, just in terms of where everything fits and sits together. And he's absolutely right. It doesn't, these things don't happen particularly quickly. A lot of thought and work that goes into these. But you can just see there in February 2017 that the Hill and Marshall joint venture partnership was formed for the first phase of this site, which is sort of up to 550 homes. And we've worked with PTE. You know, we needed to work with PTE because they produced the rule book, if you like. The design code is the rule book, and we worked to that to make sure we do achieve the standards, the quality, and really the intent that Marshall saw for this site, and actually we saw together. So there was a sort of marrying up of aspirations really from Hill and Marshall for this one. But yeah, just to sort of cherry pick some of those key dates, you saw the outline approval in November 2016 for the 1,300 homes and additional facilities that the site covers. And then we had a phase one reserve matters planning approval in August 2019. And we've just recently, beginning of this month, end of last month, submitted the 1B application, which is the remaining 308 homes, which is to the north of the site. And that's, I think Alexis has really talked around this, so he's saved me a slight job there. And he's pointed out all the sort of key aspects on the site, so I don't think I need to cover that ground either. But certainly the 1B application I just referred to is very much the northern part of this site that wraps around Kingsley Wood to the north. So we're very excited about that just going in. I touched on Hill and Marshall and this joint venture that we work in. it really is a partnership of equals, and I wanted to explain some of the sort of the fundamentals of that. We are working on this phase 1 piece of land, which is parcel 1 of 3 of the outline. It's a joint venture based on common values, looking to create sort of new communities, but we also wanted the homes to be at an affordable level for people in Cambridge to be able to buy, but not relaxing any of the standards and the quality. So again, we were both very much aiming to do that. I'm just going to try and change my view because everyone's images have now covered the what I'm trying to read. It's okay. I'll have to guess what I wrote underneath these. So yeah, we shared everything, and we want to establish a high benchmark in terms of design because this is phase 1 of 3, and there'll be many other phases to follow. And we want to have that benchmark, really establish the quality from day one. So whoever Hill or whoever else comes afterwards would be able to meet those standards. What we have is a decision making where we share decision making. And both organisations bring something different to the table in terms of the skill sets. And obviously we've both got a reputation in Cambridge that we want to build on and continue that sort of brand as well, and it matched up well together. Community, this is a really big thing, I think, for us, for Marshall, and what we find is that we're trying to embed a community within a community. We're not trying to establish something exactly new and groundbreaking. We want to fit in with what is already there. So we're working very closely, obviously, with the council, the parish councils of Fen Ditton and Teversham, the ward councillors and residents. And what we're finding is that the communication we can have with those people, and CAM cycle as well, I should mention, is that when we have some of the sort of off-site works, we're doing off-site junction improvements or footpath and infrastructure works that aren't within our site, we're finding that engagement with those residents and with the community and the parishes is really helpful because they help us identify problems that we wouldn't otherwise know. We get on the ground knowledge, and we like to work openly with them and transparently, and it really does make the solution so much better. I won't go into specifics, but we're finding that is really a positive way of working. So that's working with the community, and then we've got this community that we're trying to establish. So in appointing the estate management company, that as you can see from the plans, there's a lot of open space, a lot of green, leafy, woodland areas that we'll have to maintain. And we've used appointing a company called the Land Trust because they're very focused on social cohesion, and also the county council, the district council are putting in place a community development worker. So we're really trying to coordinate with all those different people to make sure work isn't missed, work isn't duplicated, but we do get a really good coverage and bring people to this site and make them feel at home from day one. The facilities we have on site, I think Alexis touched on in terms of the hangar building and the Marleigh Square. We do have shops, a market place, school, nurseries, sports pavilion, community hall, allotments, and obviously the open spaces as well. And of course, we've had to work very closely with the school, our neighbours, and in terms of design, appearance, and placemaking, and we've really, I think, worked very well to coordinate them into that piece of land, and offer up, every solution we can to make both of us work in parity. It's a bit like Brexit, isn't it? We couldn't get through a meeting without saying Brexit, and now we've got COVID-19. But I thought actually I would bring this into the presentation. I think we all see it on supermarket adverts now, don't we, as well? But what are we doing, and how are we coping and managing through this? And I think it's fair to say we're doing quite a lot. We'll look at the sort of delivery, the project delivery, the construction and production side of things. Excuse me. So we shut down the site for 6-7 weeks, and when the lockdown came into place, I had to do that through a controlled, very careful process. So it was done safely, so people were made aware of what's happening, making sure the site was closed safely. We have a number of vested interests in this project. We have Homes England who've got funding and an interest. We've got bank funding, obviously, and we have an affordable housing provider who have product being built on that site. So everyone wanted to make sure that we were doing things properly, which we were, of course, putting security in place and making sure we had some temporary arrangements to view the site and just to check that things weren't being damaged or anything, which safe to say they weren't. And you can see some of the images there, a little bit like your local supermarket, but we've had to bring in all the line painting, so much signage and sanitisation. If we look on the next slide, now we are operating at about 75% of pre-lockdown levels in terms of numbers on site, etc., and output. But it really gives you an idea of how far we had to go to make this site safe and make our employees and our subconsultants, subcontractors safe as well. One thing I particularly like, I have not seen it myself, but we've got a new marquee in our setup. This is for help out when it's raining and people want to have a sandwich. That was the biggest struggle for us, is keeping people dry when it's raining and they could have lunch or a break. So we've got this big marquee, and no, if anyone drives past it and does happen to see it, we're not hosting weddings, and it's not a beer tent, so don't get any ideas. But those were a number of comments we've had in the last few days. So we've managed to have some longer working hours with the council, have made that available to us, which has been very helpful. We've obviously had to change our way of working in terms of limiting confined spaces. And then obviously all of our non-site based staff, the technical staff, myself and development, obviously, we're all working from home and staying away from the site and being discouraged from meeting on the site, which I'm sure everyone's got their own story on how they're all coping with these things. So after production, we've probably tried to continue to sell our product as well. With the sales office was closed, it's now reopened. But when it was closed, we had an online virtual tour. But I just wanted to show you a very short video of what we're doing now when the sales office opened, to give you a bit of an insight into how it works. Now, if the volume doesn't work, I'd appreciate it, Simon, if you could just let me know. There's music at the moment for me.
Yeah, there's something coming through, Sean. Very quietly though. We can't actually see a video though, I must admit.
No.
Oh.
I think it's in a different window.
Yeah. Here we are. Sorry about this.
There you go, something's coming up now.
Yeah.
Here we go, yep, that's it.
Sorry about that.
We're not getting any sound now, but it's fine, Sean, I think, just to look through this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is just saying that you have to book an appointment online before you visit the sales suite.
I think the sound
You
is
can call
very
or do it
quiet.
online.
The sound is just very quiet, Sean. It might, yeah, if you turn your sound up, it might work better, but it's still very quiet, Sean, but yeah.
I'm going to stop sharing that because it's obviously not working, and I obviously tried to bite off more than I could chew by doing
Sean, are you on mute? I think we might have lost your audio. Can any of the other panelists hear Sean when he spoke? I think you're all on mute.
No, I'm afraid not.
Yeah, okay. No, we can't hear you, Sean. So perhaps, Sean, if you share your screen but untick the computer sound tab and see if that works. I'm afraid we've still lost Sean. Okay, well, while Sean's sorting that out, the technical issue out, I'm going to take a few Q&A items here for our panelists. So we'll let Sean in the background. Sean, if you want to keep on plugging away, see what you can do, get your sound back. I'm going to start asking some questions. So we've got a number of questions here that have been raised. And actually, there's quite a common theme to some of them, which is sustainability. So there's been a question raised about embodied as well as operational carbon emissions associated with the development for both the school and the wider development. So perhaps if we start first on the school, Andrew, do you want to take the one on the school and carbon, operational and embodied carbon?
Yes indeed, Simon. So I'll open it a little bit wider, if you don't mind, to actually look at the wider environmental approach we've got for the school itself. So it combines a number of different strategies in a way. So we have, first of all, fabric first. So we've addressed insulation levels, we've looked at air leakage levels, etc., as you might expect with any good building these days. We've then also looked at how we approach thermal mass in the classrooms, and in some classrooms we have exposed thermal mass. Others where that's not possible, we've actually looked at volume. So we've got natural buoyancy of air through the higher ceilings. You'll have seen on some of the illustrations Kevin had on the screen earlier, the hall for one area is an example of that, and also the first floor classrooms of that. We also have ventilation with heat recovery built in. So that also complies with Department for Education requirements for no cold drafts, etc. There's also other elements that we've added. Whilst we couldn't control the orientation of the buildings because obviously they are in with the design code and the master plan and fairly well frozen on Marleigh Square, what we have been able to do is look at areas for solar shading and also the G values of glass. So that combines to actually reduce the operational requirements on energy, and it also, we've looked at enhancing the renewables we've provided, and that is mainly through the use of additional PVs on this. So hopefully that gives people a better idea of the wider ranging passive measures we've looked at as well as active.
Super, all very good to see. What I'm going to suggest, Sean, if you're not back, perhaps you want to. No, we still can't hear you. If you want to dial off and dial back into the meeting, perhaps, and then at least we can have you join us for the Q&A. There's quite a few questions coming up. Yeah, thank you on that, Andrew. And then linked to sustainability, Alexis, if you want to say anything about the wider development, but actually, quite interestingly, someone has written in saying and linking sustainability with COVID, saying, perhaps with home working, thinking about the future, are the homes designed for room in the roof, and how do you stop overheating in the home if people are working in homes as offices? That's a really tough question, I know. But
no, it's a good question. It's a really good one.
I'm going to let you answer it how you want, but see if you can stick to Q. If not, I won't chastise you.
No, it's absolutely fine. It's a really good question. I think that okay, I'm going to sort of try to treat it holistically as well, because it's kind of the only way I can think it really. I think from a from a design perspective, we kind of had a number of different things regarding sustainability that we tried to take in a very holistic sense rather than just purely energy sustainability, social sustainability, and already thinking about the tendency towards home working, which obviously has exploded now with COVID. So taking them in any particular order, I suppose the first thing is about that drift that was happening before towards home working, which has now increased. And one of our objectives when we were designing things like the Market Square was thinking about how, yes, there'll be spaces in the home where there's certainly potential to work from home anyway, and we're sort of building in studies and things like that into the homes. But I think that one of the things that we've noticed very early on was, as we started to get feedback on things and look at other developments, is that loneliness actually is the biggest problem. I think we've all experienced that now with COVID. And it's the loneliness of that sort of working where you're not with other people, and you haven't got that sort of sense of hub. So we wanted to use the community buildings in the Market Square as this opportunity to actually have this place where people can go and do a little bit of work, do a little bit of other things, and meet colleagues and things like that. One of the reasons for having the Market Square where it was to encourage that kind of thing, because it's right next to the park and ride. We're also on the main cycle network as well. So it's this sort of idea that would already start to create that sort of social sustainability to help that. In terms of the homes themselves, as I say, quite a lot of the homes have dedicated studies anyway, small sort of study areas which have been carved out of a kind of other spaces. Mm-hmm. Give a bit of privacy when you're working. I think it's quite difficult with the, unfortunately Sean's not with us right now. It would be good to talk to him about things like roof construction. In the case of Marleigh, we've tended to occupy the roofs already in terms of thinking about the whole volume of the house. So there are certain roofs where of course that would be possible.
I'm just thinking though, I must admit I'm up in the top floor, and on a day like today the roof is perhaps not the best place to work, but there you go.
Yeah, in terms of sustainability, we tend to insulate the sort of ceiling and have a cold roof. So just because it reduces the form factor of the building.
Excellent. Thank you, Alexis. I think Sean, you're still not. Your speakers aren't still coming through, I'm afraid. Your audio. So you might want to reboot your computer. Then you've got 10 minutes to get back in. We'll see what you can do. But hang in there, don't get too frustrated. It's a hot day. Actually, sticking on the COVID theme, I'm going to have to shut my window because we've got some bloody builders outside. Oh, shouldn't say that. Sticking on COVID, there's one here, I think a question really perhaps Kevin can think about. It's from an anonymous attendee. It says, when the school was being planned, did it have to take into account any potential implications of future social distancing or ways of learning? I mean, I guess it's the planning started pre-COVID, but it's a question that we can raise to Kevin. What do you think? Yeah,
so it's interesting. The honest answer is no, because we didn't know it was going to happen when we were designing the building. But one of the important things that we've been discussing as kind of education designers is kind of how buildings can be adapted. We all know that they tend to cram kids into 30 kids in a classroom. That's the basic starting point. But actually what we do have here is space, and you can understand that in the future, whilst sports grounds are so precious in school design, and there's a huge resistance to build on them, if there were any temporary issues that came again for a short, might be 6 months to a year, we've got plenty of space on this site to bring in marquees, for instance, for some, so that they can, and also to think about, you know, temporary accommodation. We already believe that the industry are looking at porta cabins, delivering to existing school sites to double capacities, and somehow someone's going to accept there's going to be some contradiction with sports and outdoor play, but I think that's probably the only way to go forward. But this school does have plenty of external space that we could do that if we needed to. There's also the community hall. they can wander over to the Market Square and occupy some of that space.
We always hope it will be used by the schools. So.
Yeah, so I think it will be fairly flexible as designed to allow that.
Super, thank you, Kevin. So someone's asked if it's possible to get a recording of the presentation, so you're already getting followers. I'm sure if we can agree with the speakers they'll let us share the recording that we're making. I hope I told you that we were recording this before we started. There's a question here. Let's have a look at this one about SUDs. I think we did actually see evidence of SUDs in Alexis's presentation. I think the scheme is fully sudsed, if that's the right word, isn't it?
It is fully sudsed, yes. The suds are kind of used as part of the landscape that surrounds the whole, particularly of the northern section, which obviously where we've been mainly focusing in terms of that landscaping.
Excellent, thank you, Alexis. I see Sean is back, so let's just see if he's going to say anything.
Oh,
Hey.
Excellent, Sean.
Oh,
You're back.
I don't know I had to turn the computer off and start again. I'm really sorry about that.
That's right. What else do? We've got 8 minutes left. I mean, it's up to you guys. We could run a few more slides if you think that's worth doing.
Yeah. Did you want to answer the sustainability? Because I didn't think it's quite fair, Alexis, because we've done a lot of that as a company, and I saw Alexis was trying to answer for me. If I could just maybe do a quick update on our sustainability. What we've done in the early phases as part of a condition of planning was to produce a pilot scheme that we're working with the Active Building Centre and PTE have a sustainability arm in their company. And what we've done is identified pilot units or houses that we can start to roll out testing technologies. So the active technology is battery power and others, solar uses, sustainable energies, and a range of different type of technologies that could be used instead of gas or simple electricity. Then we have the passive, which is the materials, the insulation, the build-up of how you make a building. And what we want to do is to find out through that pilot is actually what do homeowners think of it in terms of its ease of use and actually its functionality. And then we can look at the sort of cost benefit and work out, in future phases what needs to be implemented to meet the sustainability targets. Because at the moment, we don't actually have a very good tried and tested model that we can rely on to say this is what people must use or should use. So we're quite excited about that. We've got another one coming out with the 1B application. So we're looking at all the different technologies available to us. And someone said about materials as well. Funny enough, one of the construction team were looking at a new type of paint that actually absorbs carbon in the air and has a better production life, but also improves and enhances indoor air quality and has a number of benefits. So we're looking at more subtle things as well, because if you can lead the industry here, I think you could get yourself a very sort of good foothold in the residential market from being that one step ahead.
Very commendable, Alexis. Some real, almost, I think they call it living lab type work going on there.
That's the idea, yeah.
Yeah, we've got. I suggest what we do is we keep with the Q&A because we've only got 5 minutes, Sean, if you don't mind. So,
if you don't mind, what I would really like to do is just try and show some very up-to-date drone footage of the site, if that's okay. It won't take very long. Yeah, let's try and do that. I really hope I don't crash the system again.
If you do, we won't invite you back again. No.
No, I'm sure. I've exhausted that invite.
While you're sharing your screen, there is a question about shared surfaces and adoption by the county. I'm not sure.
I can probably answer that one very easily, actually.
Yeah, if you could.
So we worked with the county quite assiduously in terms of making sure that we could have shared surfaces. Essentially, the rule we agreed was that for quiet residential streets of 14 homes and under, they would be adoptable as shared surfaces, and that really sort of drove quite a lot of the kind of finer tuning of the master planning to make sure that could happen.
Super. Thank you very much, Alexis. Okay, Sean, show us some pictures.
Okay, yes. Sorry, I've skipped a couple of slides, but I wanted to show you these. So October 2018, this is the start of some of the site clearance, getting ready for infrastructure works. We had to divert some footpath, we had to divert some HV cables and alike. So that work started, and this is when we first moved in. We're looking down south towards the airport. Okay. This is taken from the north of the site.
The A14 probably, yeah.
Yeah, yes, back to the A14. And then this is taken from the east looking west. So Newmarket Road is on your left and the A14 would be on your right. And again, just looking at some of the diversions that were put in place. This is actually where the Plains is going to be, the football sports pitches allotments. So this is the sort of open space area. And this is the land parcel for phase 1, the top of the site we talked about, wrapping around the Kingsley Woods, as you can see. And you can see some of the sort of diversions. I think that was a water main. I think they had to divert around the corner of the site. I've just highlighted in red here, very crudely, not to scale. The red land is the school site. I just thought I'd flag that up for you. And you can see we've actually transferred to them the tree belt for their forest school, and we've done a lot of work making that safe and habitable. And you know, it really is quite an exciting space. So I'm really sort of pleased we could offer them that. So just going from the front inwards, you can see our sales suite at the front there, next to the BP garage. The land to the left there is a future phase 2. Immediately behind the sales suite, you have what's going to be the Market Square, Block S1 and the hangar building, sort of all piecing together, and you can see where that would front onto the school site also. And then just up the centre of the road, you can see where our first phase of housing, open market and affordable housing, is being delivered. Just in a very faint distance, you can see some of the swales and landscape features that we call Gregory Park running east to west. You might not be able to see that. Better seen here with that sort of pond on the right hand side. Again, yes, just pointing out really what I've just mentioned in terms of the first units. And then again, just another idea of just really where we are. This is taken a couple of weeks ago, probably 1 to 2 weeks ago. So they're quite fresh off the press. And that was that really, thank you.
Fantastic, Sean. Thank you very much and well done. High commendation for getting back on track. That is,
thank you.
I guess, Alexis, it must be fantastic to see your master plan coming to fruition. So
it's always nerve-wracking but exciting, I think.
Excellent. Well, look, we are coming to an end now, so it really remains to me to say thank you to all of our speakers today. You did fantastically well, keeping on time and answering the questions. We haven't managed to answer all the questions. There's lots of actual questions about electric transportation in particular. I think quite a few people are nervous about being able to charge their electric bikes and bike trailers and cargo bikes in the future, and where do they even store them? That's another thing. So I won't ask Alexis to answer that one now, but really, really super. And I think overall, you know, Sean and Alexis, I commend you on your 7 years of patience to get to this far in the building process. I mean, it's in planning process. It's certainly been a long haul for you. And Kevin and Andrew, commendable stuff you're doing. I love the idea of the forest school. I love the idea of the school fronting onto the market square and that being a hub for the future. It's really, really a lovely design. So thank you very much. I should also thank our participants. We had up to 100 at one point, and we've had lots of Q&A. Sorry we haven't managed to ask all your questions. We will try in the future. We're recording this. We will make it available at some point when we get some editing done. So please look out for that. And the final thing to say before we all go is Monday, the 6th of July, the next CFCI webinar, Digital Build. We've got an architect talking about 7D BIM, whatever the 7th dimension is. We're going to find out on Monday, the 6th of July. And then we've also got a university lecturer researcher talking on behalf of the Centre for Digital Built Britain. So that should be quite an interesting topic on Monday, the 6th of July. Okay, thank you very much, everyone, to our participants, panelists, and people attending today. Goodbye from the CFCI. Goodbye.
Thank you.